This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine.
Welcome to Strangers No More, where all people are loved with the love of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. In the household of faith, there are to be no strangers, no foreigners, no rich and poor, no outside others. As fellow citizens with the saints, we are invited to change the world for the better from the inside out, one person, one family, one neighborhood at a time.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, welcome to Strangers No More. I'm Maggie Slight. Today we will be talking about Jesus Christ, his law, and his church. But first, let's talk about something that we learned this week. Andrew, can you start us off?
I started last time. No, I didn't. Dennis did. No, Dennis did. Okay. All right. What did I learn? I learned that I really love my wife. She was gone for nearly a week visiting her dad, which was very important, very needful. And I had quite a week while she was gone, but I love how the whole house feels and changes when she comes and enters the house. So the house is just fine without her. House is so much better with her.
Aw.
I think that's what everybody needs. Everybody needs somebody like that at home. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Dennis, how about you?
I learned a lot about kindness. I had the wonderful blessing of receiving this customized hardback Book of Mormon. And she did it with the rainbow flag on it. And it has a lighthouse that says shine. The rainbow flag says love. And then she has an arrow pointing, lift those with an arrow pointing off, up, rough. And she has the I love you hand ASL sign that said spread. And then a gift box that says give. And then arrowing over to faith. And that is by our friends at Humbly Art Company. And she's on Etsy. So I was just so honored. Etsy. I can't say it. You know what I mean. Everybody knows what I mean. That's my dyslexic Dennisisms. But yeah, I love this. Isn't that cool?
That is really
very
awesome.
Cool. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that with us. Bradley, how about you?
Yeah, I learned a couple things. One is to trust in God, that God will take care of you, because I'm finally graduating and I finally got a job, which I'm super excited about. It was causing me a lot of stress because I had no idea what I was going to do, but I finally got a job interview set up and they hired me right there. So I'm super excited about that. And it's nice to know that I got a job that I couldn't have gotten without my degree, that at least I'm already using my degree to do something. So it's worth it.
That's so important.
That's really nice. This is the first job I've ever had that is contingent upon my degree. I've had about like 15 other jobs that have had nothing to do with my degree. So
were you a paperboy? That's what I want to know.
No, I don't think I was ever one of those, but
I was.
Had a lot of jobs.
You were a paper girl.
Boy or a paper girl?
No, I was a substitute for a paper boy. So I was a paper boy. And in fact, I was called little boy several times by many of the people on the route.
Little boy.
Gender non-normative.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Bradley. I have something to share. Several of our temples are opening up for baptisms,
yes,
including Seattle is opened up for baptism by appointment. It's stage 2B. So check with your local temple to see what stage it's at. And more important than that, check with your temple recommend and look at that date on there and see if you need to make an appointment with your bishop and your stake president.
Maggie, I have to add to that. I love that you said that, because when COVID first hit back in March, when I was stranded in on the planet of Utah, my temple president sent us out an email probably in April. It was about a year ago. And he said it's imperative that you still keep a full temple recommend holder and do not let it expire, because you are still worthy to enter the house of the Lord, even though those doors may not be open. And so I like the fact that you said, check to see if it's expired. So I second that. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. I don't think we usually say aye. We usually raise the hand.
Yeah,
it doesn't come over on the podcast if you're listening on audio. Raising hand.
So I guess I'm in my presidential mode as being the president of the Connecticut Authors and Publishers Association. So I have to say,
I guess you
who seconds that? And then all in favor, aye.
Yeah, we're not parliamentary procedure does not really have a place here. But thank you so much. Andrew, why don't you introduce us to the lesson of his law in his church?
So his law in his church, I'm going to spend a lot of time. So we talked about the last time about moving to the Ohio is going to, more law is going to come, and also the temple will be coming. And that is what some of this is about. But I actually want to spend a little bit more time, because I think it's more applicable to me, on Edward Partridge. And it's an interesting story of Edward Partridge, because I think and I think it applies to the law as well. Edward Partridge was the first bishop of the church. So he was called as the first bishop of the church. And I think when you look at bishops and look at them at the end of their time, and you see how weary a bishop is at the end of his time serving, I think it's interesting that the first bishop was basically set that in motion, set that stage, and it tells you how important a bishop is to the organization of the church. But one of the things that I find really interesting is the amount of sacrifice Edward Partridge had to endure to maintain his faith throughout all of his life, and to the point that he struggled to keep his faith throughout his life. But the end of his life, so I don't know if you guys have been referenced. They reference it sometimes in the manual, and it's Revelations in Context. It's a little book that goes along with Come Follow Me, and it tells some of these stories of it gives you context to some of the revelation. And it has an article, and I won't go through the whole article. It talks about a bishop unto the church. It's all about Edward Partridge. And the end of it is very poignant to me. So it describes all these things that he has to go through. Persecutions and financial issues and just basically, I mean, he was commanded by God to give up his livelihood to become the bishop and to do these things. I mean, he basically had to give everything over to the Lord, and yet he still struggled. And it's, there's some, go ahead and read it. I'm not going to read it all there, but I'm going to read the last two paragraphs. It says, just the last paragraph. Sorry. When Partridge was called as bishop, the Lord described him as one whose heart is pure before me, for he is like unto Nathaniel of old, in whom there is no guile. Early church member David Pettigrew described Partridge as a gentleman filling the high office which he occupied with dignity, such as the New Testament states that a man filling the office of a bishop should be. His appearance was grave and thoughtful, yet pleasant and agreeable. His family, like himself, very agreeable. W. Phelps wrote of Partridge that few will be able to wear his mantle with such simple dignity. He was an honest man, and I loved him. 8 months after Partridge's death, the Lord revealed that the faithful first bishop of the restored church was with him. And so I think that's a poignant way to cap off who Elder Edward Partridge is, especially when you read of so much struggle and trial that he had to exist. And I think his life shows us that just because the Lord calls us on, actually more like because the Lord calls us into his service, does not mean we're going to have it easy. In fact, we are very likely going to be asked to sacrifice everything.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Andrew. I want to take a little bit of time and to explore what the attributes of Edward Partridge and therefore bishops that have been called that. And it was while you were reading that, and while I actually have 3 attributes of Edward Partridge written on my wall right in front of me. And one is sacrifice, another is faith, and the third is no guile. But as you were reading those paragraphs, I was reflecting and realizing that every bishop that I have had in my 8 years in the church have really reflected a lot of those same attributes. They have been some of the most faithful people that I've ever met. They have sacrificed and therefore understood empathy and could empathize with welfare situations and things like that. And I've never met any of my bishops that had any guile. So that was something for me to reflect on. So thank you.
I think it's interesting. Bishops are called, and they're completely imperfect people. I think I've said this before, I think on this podcast, but at least to us when we're not on the podcast, the best thing about this church is that we have a lay ministry, and the worst thing about this church is that we have a lay ministry. And I say that jokingly, but it's actually not 100% true, because the atonement of Jesus Christ, God's hand is in this church. But just because a bishop, you may not see eye to eye with the bishop. And I've had bishops where I don't see eye to eye with them, or I don't quite get it. If you pay attention, if you're actually able to look under the covers a little bit, you see that there is someone who that they are called, or likely multiple people, and may not be you, that they're called for that period of time to support. They're called for someone else. I've seen that happen with those. There's a bishop that I struggled with, especially with how he dealt with my friend who was homosexual back in, and then I heard some stories about him and his compassion and charity that turned some other lives around that struggled as well. And I thought, who am I to judge whether someone's the right person for a calling?
So I've once heard that sometimes a bishop may be called to a calling to learn empathy and compassion, because when those doors are closed and they're listening, they're becoming more like Christ. And that is a perfect example of why a bishop would be called.
Right. And when I was saying that the bishops that I've had have really shown those characteristics of sacrifice, faith, and no guile, I wasn't talking that I had never had challenges with bishops, or never feeling like I have been given to a bishop as a learning experience for us both. I've had many of those experiences, but on these particular attributes, sacrifice, faith, and guile, I found if I were to be charitable to all of the bishops that I've had over this last 8 years, those are the attributes that I find in all of them. So anyway.
I think that's a good, interesting point. Sorry, I want to bring this up because you just brought up something. I think it's interesting. We expect a bishop to offer charity to us. And I think it's right to expect that, right? That's his calling. But I think sometimes, because of the nature of his calling, we forget to offer charity back.
Oh, yeah.
So please keep bishops in your mind. Sorry.
Please, they've got a lot of responsibilities. Dennis, how about you?
Yes.
What did you pick up from this lesson?
Well, I love in Doctrine and Covenants 42, God's law governs his church and can govern our lives. And that made me reflect and ponder a lot this week on 3 Nephi, or as I used to say, Nephi, but Nephi, 15:9. And I'm going to read that is, behold, I am the law and I am the light. Look unto me and endure to the end, and ye shall live, for unto him that endureth to the end will I give eternal life. And I think a lot of us don't realize what enduring to the end means, because I never really realized that until I joined the church. And it was something that enduring to the end is a lot more than just enduring to the end. It's about trusting and having faith in knowing that there's a reason or a path that's going to govern our lives, not just our church, but our lives. And that's my biggest takeaway.
Thank you, Dennis. Bradley, how about you?
What I really enjoyed from these passages is particularly section 42 and its emphasis on missionary work, because I think that's just so key to how this church functions and spreading the gospel. And that's always been like near and dear to my heart. And so I really I think it's really cool just learning about those things and how it's talking about the promise of spreading the gospel to the whole earth and how we do missionary work 2 by 2 and things like that. So yeah, not a whole lot of thoughts outside of that. I think I just love that in this context of talking about the law and the church and the gospel and all that, it's all wrapped around missionary work as well. So
Wonderful. Any further comments about the lesson?
You know, I like what Andrew brought up earlier about, and now I just completely forgot what I was going to say. So I'm going to move on.
Okay. Andrew, anything further?
About the lesson, I think we spent time on Edward Partridge, but I think section 42, as Bradley talked, it really is the law. I mean, it talks everything from the 10 Commandments to some base, like you can pretty much find everything in a temple recommend interview somewhere in this section, right? And so the Lord is preparing that, and I think that it goes hand in hand. And what we've described is in the church, the law is given by God, but our covenants are, we report our covenants and our standing to our bishop. That's how it works, right? And so there's an interesting play between these two things that Edward Partridge and the law kind of happen at the same time, and it definitely comes through. That's what I had to say.
Can I add to that? First of all, Bradley, kudos, because I'm usually the one that's always preaching about missionary work, and I'm really glad that you brought that up, Bradley. So thank you. But what I wanted to say was, I love in section 42:61 that God gives us revelation to guide his church. And I think that's something that we need to have more faith in. If we don't understand everything that the prophet may say or the apostles, that we need to revert to James 1:5. You know, the socks I'm wearing today from Book of Mormon, Sacred Grove, any of us lack wisdom, ask of God.
Perfect. Absolutely. Thank you, Dennis. Bradley, I'm going to let you start off the love and light.
Perfect. So my love and light doesn't necessarily have to do anything with this section, really. It's just something that I've been thinking about a lot in regards to, I think I've touched about this a few times probably, but I guess repetition is always important. But I just think it's so vital that we remember the systems of family and God's family and chosen family because that to me is the key to the gospel. I was able to spend a lot of time with my immediate family and some extended family over the last little bit, and that was really meaningful to me and kind of it rejuvenates me and excites me and makes me kind of feel like this is why I'm living. This is what I want. And then in regards to my identity, being gay, having this aspiration for a future family is what keeps me going, of this desire of wanting to raise a family and have a family. So it all goes back to family. So I think we just need to not lose sight of that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bradley. Dennis, how about you?
I feel compelled to share something where it says in Doctrine and Covenants in our Come Follow Me manual that it asks us to record our impressions, and you can see how color-coded this is for those that are on YouTube. I wrote my impression, God, I need you. And I guess my love and light would be, if thou shalt ask, thou shalt receiveth revelation upon revelation, knowledge upon knowledge.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dennis. Andrew.
Mine, I can't stop thinking, since Dennis was speaking earlier about enduring to the end. When I was a kid, I thought enduring to the end meant I had to endure. It was all me. It was all on me. I posted on Facebook this week a comic strip that I posted before. It comes up every year, so I repost it, and it's kind of a takeoff of the footprints in the sand kind of thing. And the comic strip is the first panel says, Christ says, hey, if you look back, the footprints where there's just 2 footprints is where I carried you. And then it says, and then there's other places where I dragged you along, which I think
Kicking
is
and
hilarious.
Screaming and gnashing of teeth.
Yeah, sometimes. And it's funny, but the atonement of Jesus Christ is not only about forgiveness of sin. It's absolutely that. I'm not diminishing that part of it at all. But it is also about strengthening and enabling us to endure to the end. And enduring to the end is something we do with Christ, not by ourselves. And that's what I wanted.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. I just want to share, sorry, I had to move my phone here just a minute. I wanted to share a section or a part from Doctrine and Covenants 42-43, because it really spoke to me. And whoever among you are sick and have not faith to be healed, but believe, shall be nourished with all tenderness, with herbs and mild food, and not by the hand of an enemy. I really like that last phrase, because for me, that's the key. Compassion. That we need to have compassion for one another, no matter where we are in our journey of faith, in our journey of healing. If you have faith not to be healed, that is another faith. So wherever you are in your journey, we hope that this podcast, this show has helped you in that journey, and we would love to hear about that. So feel free to message one of us or message the show, and one of us will get that, probably me. But I can pass it on to one of our other hosts as well. Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't be shy. Please share it with all of your friends, or text the link to, I don't know, a church friend. We hope that your week ahead is full of the love and light of Jesus Christ. We love you, and so does God.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.